What's up, everybody? This is Clint bringing to you the second part of my sit and go series, the next level of sit and go play. Today, we're going to be discussing utilizing HUD stats to steal. And if you recall from the first video, we covered setting up the HUD and going through our database in Hold'em Manager and putting together some filters, for the blind level, and also identifying, push-fold ranges of certain regs. So we're going to take that a step further now and actually get into the meat and potatoes of, why we set up the HUD and what this next level of sit and go play actually means. So today, what we're going to be covering is, as you remember, the key word for this whole series is going to be exploiting. So utilizing HUD stats to exploit, and specifically pre-flop raise or opening up for raises in unopened pots. So the question is when to open. Now, what we're going to be talking a lot about today is the fact that we do not need a hand to open. That's going to be the central topic for today. To truly exploit the players, to get the extra edge, we actually do not need a hand to open. It's going to be all about the players to our left and the stack sizes. And essentially, this is why my own VPIP and preflop raise stats, they went from 14-12, which is your typical, grinder type of stats, sit and go player stats, pretty tight, um, and why they went from 14-12 to 22-18. And like I said, I think in the first video, it's not just we got loose and aggressive for, any old reason. There's very specific strategies that we're going to be utilizing that's going to allow us to open up more. And today is one of those strategies. So, this is one of the pet peeves of mine, when I'm working with students going through hand history reviews, or especially doing live play reviews with them, um, is that you get a hand and you don't like the hand. It's like 9-4 offsuit, and you just click the fold box, and without even considering what else is going on, you just don't like your hand, and you click the fold button. That's the habit I want to get everybody out of, and I want to change those habits now. So before you make a determination of whether you're going to play a hand, is to always be looking to your left. Who's to your left? Is it a reg? Is it a fishy player? Or is the fishy player a calling station? Do you have aggressive players? Meaning they're 3-betting a lot, or 3-betting versus a steal. High fold to c-bet, and obviously the stats will tell you that. Um, figure out who the actual players are. And then, once you figure out who the players are, you have a good idea of who they are, you have to ask yourself, are you committed to any stacks? And by committed, I mean, if you raise and somebody 3-bet shoves, do you have to call them based upon pot odds? For example, um, if you have a 2,000 stack at blinds 100, 200, you put in a raise instead of shoving, and you got a stack that's sitting there with a 1K stack, or multiple players there with 1K, meaning 5 big blinds. When you raise, you're most likely going to be committed, and you're going to have to call and show down your hand versus them just purely due to pot odds. So you have to ask yourself, are you committed to any stacks, and essentially how many? Um, Now here is a key question you need to ask, and this will have to do with the players that you've identified that are to your left. If you raise, can anyone flat you? Or will they only 3-bet or fold? We'll get back to that question, but these are the questions that you need to be asking yourself before you make a determination on whether you want to fold or raise or shove, whatever you're going to do. So get into the habit of doing this. And today a lot what we're going to talk about is the middle stage, but you can get an idea of these players at the first level. As soon as the game starts up, figure out who's to your left. Who do you already have hands on and stats on, and maybe who are the random guys that might need to pay more attention to, and their stats will develop as they play more hands during that game. So keep an eye on the players on these situations. That's the first step to figuring out what hands we're going to be opening. So, in regards to those HUD stats and looking at them and identifying which ones are more important to figure out who the players are, obviously, the more common one that everybody uses that most are familiar with is the VPIP stat. It'll help you identify the loose versus tight players, or fishy random players, losing players versus the regs, ABC regs. Um, as I mentioned from the first video, I like to use the fold to steal a ton. As I said, we're gonna be stealing a lot, so we want to find out who's folding to a steal a lot. And ideally, greater than 70% means those are guys that we can probably race through without too much trouble. And again, three bet versus steal stat. Typically, versus a steal, a 10% stat will be aggressive. You definitely need a half decent sample of hands to get a determination of the true percentage here, but it'll be good to take a note of which regs, even if you identify a reg to your left, isn't an aggressive reg. Are they assuming that you're opening wide from the cutoff, for example, and three betting you extremely wide? So greater than 10% is pretty aggressive, meaning you might want to be a little bit careful opening up versus one or even definitely multiple opponents that are aggressive, because you might just have them to raise fold too much, putting yourself in a spot to just lose way too many chips too often. Here's another look at fold to C bet. I mean, this is like an ideal scenario. It's not that I don't necessarily do it all the time, but many times again I see people fold certain hands that I don't think should be folded, and I ask why, and they say, well, there's a really loose player in the blinds. Okay, I understand that. They may be calling your raise, and maybe we don't want to open up with just trash hands, but first of all, playing against a loose, fishy player in position has its advantages, for one, especially when you hit your hand. Two, also, if it is a loose player that may be calling out of the blinds, look at the fold to C-bet. If you have stats on that player and you see that they're folding to a C-bet a lot, look to play pots versus those players. Essentially, what you can end up doing is building a pot to eventually steal it on the flop, and there can be a lot of value to that. So, you're not going to have maybe all of these stats on every player in the ideal scenario, and we're going to get into what the ideal scenarios are, but I at least want to get you in the habit of looking at the stats even before you look at your hand, because the hand many times is not going to be important. So get yourself in the habit of looking at the stats and identifying the players. So here is the question, or the answer to this question will allow us to make certain plays that's going to provide us with the premise for the rest of this video. So I'll let you think about this for a couple seconds, but what is the one thing regs do not do as blinds increase above 25-50? And again, when I say regs, I mean winning players, whether they're ABC or solid winning regs, guys that know what they're doing. What's one thing they do not do above the 25-50 blind level? 3, 2, 1. Got your answers? Who came up with call raises? That is a key topic, or understanding of how regs are going to play so that we can exploit them. When you get to blinds, the 100 blind level, 200 blind level, and your stacks are getting around the 15 big blind stack level and 10 big blinds, you know that you're not supposed to be calling raises. You're at 100, 200, somebody raises the 400 or 500. You're not calling a raise, or you're not supposed to just be calling raises when both of your stacks are, at 2,500 or 3,000. It's either three bet or fold. Okay. Now there are people that call raises, certainly, but again, those aren't the regs. We'll deal with them later. So this concept is how we're going to exploit the regs. So as I said, key concept. And not necessarily when pot committed. We're going to go through some scenarios of when we're pot committed and when we're not, and how that will change things. But for the most part, let's just say when we're not pot committed. If players to your left are only going to three bet or fold, so no calling, therefore they're typically regs to your left, You actually do not need a range to open. I'll say that again. If the players, you've identified the players to your left as tight players, regs, and we've just said that past the 25-50 level, 99.9% of the time when you open, they're not going to be calling your raise, which means you're not going to have to play post flop. Then you do not need a range to open, because essentially you're going to be doing the same thing with 3 deuce offsuit as you do with queen jack, for example. If you're above 10 big blinds and the players to your left are above 10 big blinds in their regs, and you raise with queen jack and they 3-bet you all in, many times versus that average player in the average scenario, you're not calling the all in with queen jack. And you know what? You're not calling the all in with 3 deuce either, or 9-4, or maybe even like ace 7, hands like that. So they're all going to be similar in what you do with them. You're going to raise to steal the blinds, otherwise fold to an all in, no post flop play. Now the difference between ace 7 and 3 deuce, you do have a blocker card there. So I know that's the common argument for, well, that's why I'll raise ace 7 and not 3 deuce. I have a blocker. I understand. That makes sense. I'm going to show you why that doesn't even matter. So again, that's the key concept. So what we can do then is, when we're not going to play post flop, we can continue to open up hands with 100% of our range. Yes, and any 2-card open. And again, we're talking when we're not in push fold mode. We're talking, even 10 big blinds, 11 big blinds, 12 big blinds plus. So you're looking to open. And especially when you're at like 12 big blinds plus, and you're not sure what to do in that awkward phase of you're a little bit too deep to shove. You don't want to open up mediocre hands because you're a little bit afraid of somebody 3-betting. Well, we're going to be opening up with those stack sizes, and we're going to do it with 100% of our range. And what may eventually happen is you will start inducing some 3-bets, and you're going to want to induce them with premium hands. So you're going to be doing the same thing, like I said, with 3 deuce, pocket aces, queen jack, whatever. Too often I see people, they will min raise. Let's say they have 12 big blinds. They will min raise with their aces and kings and queens to induce a 3-bet. They will shove ace king, ace queen, pocket nines, those good hands they don't necessarily want to play post flop with, or they're concerned about playing post flop, and they don't really want to induce too much. They just want to shove because they know it's plus EV. They'll shove those hands with 12 big blinds, and then they'll fold the rest out. You've essentially polarized your range. And I know a lot of guys at the table probably aren't paying attention to that anyway, but certain regs are. And you don't want to get into the habit of polarizing your range, and I see it very often, even from very solid players. There's hands they min raise with to induce, obviously the premiums. There's hands they just shove to beat because they're plus EV, and then there's hands they just fold. Well, we're going to do the same thing with every hand. We're going to be min raising, or 2.2, or whatever you want to do. That's okay. And what that'll allow you to do is it'll give you more confidence to open up more hands. So when you hold 3 deuce, you don't have to be afraid of, well, I usually shove hands here. I don't want to shove 3 deuce, so I'll just fold it. But if you are now saying, well, I'm going to min raise ace king, I'm going to min raise pocket aces, I'm going to min raise queen jack, I'm going to min raise 3 deuce as well. And like I said, since your range won't be polarized now, you will start potentially getting, inducing when you want to induce 3-bets from players with those best hands, because again, your range is not polarized. So what all this means is we're going to be able to steal wide from all positions at the table, not just the button, not just the cutoff and small blind, but from middle position and even under the gun. Yes, I did say that. We are stealing from under the gun. So typically we want to be opening wide and stealing a lot more as the blinds increase. And at 15-30, 25-50, we can still be relatively tight. I mean, we want to open up and continue to steal blinds where we can and get involved in good spots, but we know that the blinds don't mean a whole lot at that point. There's some other strategies we can use in the early stages to build our stack, which we'll get into in the next video, actually. But as the blinds get to 100, 200, and then 200 with antes, now 200 with antes is only a Poker Stars structure. I'm playing on merge. The antes don't kick in till later. They don't have the 100, 200 with antes. So um, regardless of whether you're playing on Stars or some other network, when the antes kick in, that's the time to really ramp up how often you're stealing. And if the antes aren't kicked in, like if for anybody that played on full tilt over a year ago, they didn't have antes in their sit and goes. That's okay. As the blinds increase, obviously the blinds are worth it, so we can go ahead and open wider as the blinds start to increase because they're still worth, um, they're still valuable to building our stack. So, but the antes make things even more juicier because with the blinds and the antes, you've essentially got a bigger pot to steal, which allows us to build our stack, which allows us to play a better and more effective mid game and around the bubble. And here's what I mean by that. If you don't open in the spots that we're going to talk about, essentially what's gonna happen is you're gonna fall again into that zombie robotic push fold mode. You're gonna get to the middle stage of your game towards the bubble. You're gonna be sitting there with 8, 9, 10 big blinds, and it's gonna be push fold, push fold, push fold nonstop. Well, if we start opening up more in the middle game at big blind 100, 200, 200 with antes, 300 with antes, and we start picking up just, we don't have to pick every single pot up, but just one or two here or there, that can mean the difference by the time you get to the bubble. That can mean the difference between having to play push fold to steal or shoving all in to steal, or with 7, 8, 9 big blinds, or having 12, 13 big blinds and raising to steal. Now, every time I don't care how good your push fold game is, every time you shove all in, you risk getting knocked out. And if you remember, the point of why I'm doing this series is because as you move up stakes and there's more regs in those games, other people are going to know, Nash ranges, ICM, what the proper pushing range and calling ranges are. So your push fold game can be the best, and I'm sure you're very profitable, but it's still going to cause a high variance game when you're involved in pushing and calling battles, all in battles with other solid players. So the way to get that edge is stop playing push fold, and we can stop playing the push fold, calling all in game by simply just having a bigger stack. We can play much more effective. This will be much lower variance. We're only risking, let's say we raise to 2.5. You're only risking 2.5 big blinds to steal versus maybe your entire 10 big blind stack to steal. So what it's going to cause is lower variance, higher ROI, and this is one of those strategies that I said is going to allow us to have a lower variance type of play. And again, so as I said, middle stages with antes extremely important, and your opening ranges should increase as well because there's so many chips in the pot that they're extremely valuable to your stack, which allow you to, again, and like I said, play a more effective at middle and bubble play, but also bigger stack means you're going to probably come in first place a lot more. That was probably the biggest improvement for myself. My first place numbers went through the roof compared to what they used to be. Even though my in the money numbers, I'm going to be talking about 18 mans, when I was playing on full tilt, my 18 man in the money was a little over 28%, but after going back and analyzing my in the money distribution, it was actually pretty bad. My first place numbers were pretty low. Actually, first through fourth place were pretty low, or even keel with everything else. So you don't really want that. Look, if you're playing 18 mans, you want your in the money distribution to kind of look like cell phone bars. First is greater than second, is greater than third, is greater than fourth. Now that's for 18 mans. The other game types have different in the money distributions, but talking about 18 mans, my in the money was 28%, but my distribution in the money was terrible. Or my in the money was 28%. My distribution in the money was pretty bad. Once I started changing and adapting these strategies, my in the money actually dropped by about 1%. So I was right around the 26.5 to 27% in the money for my 18 mans, but my first place numbers went through the roof. They went from about 6% to over 9%, and that dwarfed all the other finish places of third, second, fourth. So that'll be another cause and effect of essentially picking up more chips along the way during the game. And the way to do this, and when I look back on my stats, is from big blind 200 with ante 25 all the way up to big blind 600. Those are very typical blind stages for 18 mans. I'm sure for 9 mans, and obviously as the other multi-table sit and goes, you'll even have bigger blinds. My VPIP and preflop rate, my VPIP and preflop raise stats ranged from 2219 all the way up to 3631. So while my overall stats were 2218, including all parts of the game, as the blinds started to get up there, I was definitely higher than 2218. It needs to ramp up because of how valuable the blinds are, and we're going to get in some calculations about why that is, or just to justify that as well. Now, I will exercise some caution here. So before we get into the actual hands to review and calculations to prove some of these strategies, I don't want you to think that this is the way you have to play sit and goes now. I don't want you to go into every game and open, once big blinds hit 200, you're opening up every single hand. That's not the point of what we're doing here. What I'm doing here and in the future videos is giving you strategies to add into your repertoire of plays. There's going to be some times where the ABC unexploitable strategy is the best way to play. There's going to be other times when the types of strategies we're talking about here is the more optimal way to play. The point is that under certain conditions, different plays are going to be the more optimal ones, and I want to give you some new plays, like opening up wide and utilizing the stats to do so that when you recognize scenarios, you can take advantage of that because you know exactly how to exploit that scenario. So when I say caution, I mean you're not always going to have the ideal players and the ideal stats to your left. Not everybody's going to be a reg every single time. Trust me, I know. I went from playing on PokerStars to playing on Merge. On Merge in a 9-man game, doesn't matter whether you're playing a $5, an $11, or $22 game, I've got a table full of 30 plus VPIP players. So right now when I'm playing on Merge, it's hard for me to open up wide and truly exploit because many times they're not players to exploit. And the way to exploit them really is not by opening wide, is by playing a solid, plus EV game. So it's okay to open wide if you maybe have one or maybe maximum two random recreational loose players to your left. But if there's multiple, fishy players to your left, like if I'm sitting at a merge table and I look to my left and I got 3 guys with a VPIP over 30, the best thing to do is only play your premium and what I call blind stealing hands. And by blind stealing hands, I mean hands that can play well post-flop, considering you might have to play post-flop if there's 3 or 4 guys to your left that are loose, or that have showdown value. But of course, you're going to fold those hands to a 3-bet. So the blind stealing hands that we'll call them are hands like Queen Jack, Jack 10, maybe Ace 8, your small pockets, suited connectors, broadways, that again you can flop well or have some showdown value. So in those scenarios, it's best to play unexploitable or an ABC, and that is the more optimal way to play against those players. The strategies we spoke about before, and we're going to be speaking about it in the future videos, again, are things to just add into your repertoire of plays so that when the conditions present themselves, you know how to take advantage and increase your edge when appropriate. So that's my word of caution before you guys watch this video, go into your next game, and start, opening up every single hand at big blind 200 with antes. So let's get into some examples and a little bit of some crazy EV calculations to explain what we're actually talking about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some hand histories from my Hold'em manager so we can see the stats. So we're going to close that down. We're going to open up the replayer here, and let's start taking a look at some stats. So I just filtered for hands that I opened, and let's take a look at the stats again. And here I'll bring up my this notepad file to show the HUD stats again, because again, this might look like a total mess of stats, but you can pause it, take a look at it, see what I'm looking at. Essentially, for these hands, we're going to be looking at these two numbers here, like the 21-17, 22-21, the VPIP and preflop raise, to get an idea of who's to our left. So if I'm at this table and I'm sitting with ace-7 in middle position, I want to look to see, remember, get into the habit of who's to your left. Okay, Sexy Go-Go here, I know is a reg. Pesto Rob I'm not as familiar with, but over small sample, can't get too much information. OT Playboy, 1412, reg tight. AK Bozo, only 7 hands, don't recognize, but look, we are going to be committed to that stack if we raise. And Hope Fluky is a reg. So 3 of the 5 are definitely regs. We're committed to 1, and we have an unknown. The other thing is, again, look at stack sizes. Everybody's above 10 big blinds, and so we're not committed to everybody except for this small stack. So too many times, I'll see people fold these hands because they really don't know what to do with them. Like ace-7. I mean, I could care less that I have ace-7 here. I guess the only reason I don't mind ace-7 is if we raise, we have some showdown value versus his wide shoving range with 5 big blinds there. But again, this is one of those scenarios where it may not be a bad spot to open and fold to a 3-bet. So if we open here, and again, this is big blind 200 with antes, if we open for 440, that's my standard raise, 2.2, and anybody 3-bet shoves or 3-bets at all, we can easily get away. We're not playing post-flop against these guys. Again, I don't know about Pesto Rob, but it's just one player. I'm not too concerned. I'll take the shot. So I know I'm not going to play post-flop. So I'll definitely go ahead and just open here to 440. And again, if AK Bozo shoved, then we would definitely be calling here. So I just want to show you again what I'm looking at, and you don't have to be in late position to open up with aces. You can be in any position, or any cards for that matter. Now I want you to remember this hand. We're going to do some calculations to prove why opening here is plus EV. So remember this hand. We're gonna revisit it. So King 6. Okay, it gets folded to us. We don't have any antes, but big blind 100, 200. If we look to our left, we've got everybody at 9 big blinds or more. And hopefully at some point the stats will refresh. All right, and so we got the stats to refresh here. We got TS Marita, who is a reg, 1511. Genuine Nick, only 9 hands, but 8-0, so we'll take that for what it's worth. This guy here in the small blind, we've got at 17-13, and Wayne, we only have 1 hand on. So maybe 1 unknown here for the most part. And again, we're not committed to any of these stacks here. So we can go ahead and open King 6 because we know we're probably not going to play post flop. If we are going to play post flop, it may be against this guy. But hey, we have position. I'm willing to take that risk. So we have King 6, not a very good hand, not really looking to do much with it except for steal the blinds, in what I think is an optimal scenario to do so. So again, it's only going to be 3-better fold for most of these guys. No post flop play. Who cares what hand you have? Go ahead and open. Queen 7. Same deal. So we have Queen 7. We get it folded to us. There's a stats refreshing. Thank you, Hold'em Manager. We look to our left. We've got one stack who's getting kind of short, but guess what? I'm going to be happy to fold, raise fold if he shoves. We're not going to have too much equity calling down with Queen 7. So we'll raise here. And again, Tack Louie is a reg I'm familiar with. He's a multi-tabler. It says his stats are a little bit wider than they actually are. He's a pretty tight player. And I just know he's only going to be three betting or folding, and these guys are only going to be three betting or folding as well. So again, we're not going to have any post flop play. And even here, even though he's a random guy, 33-22, it's one player. We're not going to play post flop. We're just going to be raise folding. So stacks are perfect. Players seem pretty good to be raising through. So go ahead and open here. If you miss these spots, look, that is, so what's the pot here? 650 chips. If you just pick that up twice, by opening up wide, that's an extra 1,300 chips that you can go into the money with or around the bubble with that allow you to possibly raise instead of shove all in. So it's not that I'm going to be raising nonstop. I look for, you might only get two or three opportunities a game to potentially open wide given the stacks and the players to your left. But take advantage of them when they present themselves. Now here's a nice spot where it's not a full table, but we're under the gun here. We're at big blind 200 with Annie's. We've got a half decent stack. If we look to our left, we're not committed to anybody here. Say what again? He's the shortest one. If he three bet shoves, I'm folding ace seven. Ace seven does not do well against the shoving range, especially if he's shoving against my under the gun raise. So we're not going to be committed to anybody. And looking at the stats of the players, we've got 14-10, 13-11, 19-13, 12-10. It says 28-24. He's getting a little bit short, but he's a reg. 15-12 and 19-13. That's about as tight of a table as you're going to get. So I don't necessarily care that I have ace seven. This could be deuce three for all I care. We can definitely go ahead and open for a raise here, three bet or fold to a three bet if anybody three bet shoves, and we're not going to be playing post flop. And again, this is on the bubble, maybe not the best example in the world, but again, if you've set the stage for yourself and even for the table that you're going to be stealing with pocket aces and 9-4 with the same raise and ace king with, you're not going to be shoving all in, you're going to be min raising with all of those hands, it'll give you more confidence to open up hands like this because you're going to also balance that by raising with ace king as well. So don't be afraid, don't look at your cards, look at the stats. Now the players here are a bit looser, but we're on the bubble, so we can use our stack to our advantage. But by min raising a lot of your range, it'll give you more confidence to do so with these trash hands. 100, 200 here. We've got Live at Pompeii as a reg. This guy looks pretty loose. And this may not be the best table in the entire world, but you know what? The stacks are good for it at least. We've got a tight player here in the blinds, so sometimes you might just want to go for it. So that's a point of what I'm talking about here is who cares about your cards? Look at the stats. We've got a tight player here. Burke is a reg, tight. Relatively tight players in the blinds. You've got a good stack for it. You're not committed to anybody. There's a low likelihood that you're going to be playing post flop. So I would do the same thing here with king 10 that I do with 6-7 that I do with 3 deuce. I'm going to raise and fold to a shove. Alright, so I think you guys get the point of looking at the players 11-10, 19-16, 17-15, 19-16. They're regs. We're not going to be playing post flop. So 8-4 doesn't really matter where your cards are. You're going to fold to a 3 bet from all of them. So that I just wanted to give you some hands to give you an idea of what I'm looking at and what you should be looking at as well. Obviously, most people are going to look at this and be like 8-4 fold. Well, no. Get out of that habit. Look at the stats, look at the players before you look at your hand, and then make a determination of whether you're going to open. So let's get into some calculations to prove this so that I don't seem like a total whack job raising under the gun with hands like 8-4. So here's a nice little tool. It's called Cardrunners EV, and essentially what this does, I'm not going to get into the all the details of it. Obviously, this probably looks like a mess at the moment. Um, Essentially, what we can do is develop decision trees, and by that I mean we can set up scenarios to where we add conditions when we raise and we've got 4 or 5 players to our left. We give them decisions to make, and based upon all those decisions, we can figure out the optimal calling and opening ranges. So this is a really nice tool to figure out if opening up with 8-4 here is a plus EV thing to do, based upon the decisions we have to make when these guys fold and when they 3-bet. So let me set up the scenario here for you. So we've got, so I just gave it a 9-man prize structure to make life easy, 50, 30, 20 prize structure. And we are going to be 6-handed here, and we're going to be under the gun +4. So one next to the hijack. And the blinds are going to be at, let me get to that first, 100, 200, and let's add, we got 6 players, so why don't we add the antes to the pot. And let's go back to the stacks. So I have a stack of 2,400, so 12 big blinds. We got a 2,000 stack of 5,000. Guy that's a little bit shorter, about 8.5 big blinds. So you can see the stacks there. And what we're going to do is we're going to test this theory of, can we open up with any 2 cards? So here we're going to raise to 440 with any 2 cards. And the first player to our left, who has a stack of 2,000, we're going to have him 3-bet shove. And we're going to give him just a standard 3-bet shoving range of pocket 9s to aces, ace-king, ace-queen. And that's what he's going to 3-bet with. And we're going to, for right now, just avoid any overcallers. So whenever he 3-bet shoves, everybody else to the left is going to fold. And it makes no difference to the calculation whether you add in pocket aces for everybody else, because we're folding anyway with the majority of our hands. So he 3-bet shoves with this range, everybody else folds. We have to make a determination of what we're going to call with. So, but let's say the player to our left folds and the cutoff 3-bet shoves. He's got a 5K stack. He's probably going to be shoving with the same range. 9s, aces. I mean, you could add in possibly ace-jack, but we're just going to go with average ranges here. The slightly shorter stack, let's say the cutoff folds, then let's get to the button. He's going to 3-bet shove a little bit wider, pocket 8s, and now he's going to bring in ace-jack. And the same thing is going to be for the small blind and the big blind. So if it's folded to all these guys, here's the 3-bet ranges that they're going to have. And accordingly, for each player that's going to 3-bet, we have to make a determination of what we would call with. So we're going to open up any 2 cards, and the first player to our left 3-bet shoves. We're going to call with pocket 10s and ace-king, pocket 10s plus and ace-king, because his 3-betting range is going to be only ace-queen, ace-king, and pocket 9s. And same calling range if the cutoff shoves. We can add in ace-queen for the guys that are going to shove us a little bit wider, and we can add in pocket 9s and ace-queen, pocket 9s and ace-queen. So pretty standard situation. We're simplifying certain things, but you'll get the point here in a second. So what we need to do is figure out, after all these decisions are considered, is this a plus EV play or not? So let's perform our EV run. And this is doing a Monte Carlo. It's going through 100,000 simulations to figure out, is this plus EV or not? So let's give it a couple seconds as we stare at all the ICM conversions. And we're going to get into some different scenarios as well, utilizing these trees. So here you go. What I want you to focus on is this here, 1.17%. After we consider all these scenarios, opening up with any 2 cards is going to be plus EV. 1.17. You can't miss on that spot. Most people are so used to looking at sit and go wizard and analyzing the edge and plus EV of a push or fold. If you saw in Sit and Go Wizard that you missed a shove that was 1.17%, you would think, wow, that's a huge leak. I'm missing something really big there. I'm missing out on some prize pool equity. You can't miss out on this either. So we can look at this, and then we can stare. We can look at the entire graph of opening ranges and what the EV is. I mean, obviously, Pocket Aces has the highest plus EV of 3.55. But even if we open up 3 deuce offsuit, if you look down there at the bottom right, 1.17 for 3 deuce offsuit. So it's going to be plus EV with our entire range of hands. And that is with antes. Now let me just show you how important antes are. Let's take that scenario and let's take out the antes. So just 100, 200. And let's perform the run again. As we stare at all the ICM conversions, I wish I had some elevator music to play for you. But I'm a bit of a fish when it comes to recording videos and doing all the nice editing, so please excuse me for that. Come on. There we go. So it's still 0.56%. It's still plus EV to open up with any 2 cards. Obviously, you see, though, the advantage that the antes have on the EV and how valuable it is to pick up chips as those antes kick in. And that's why I had that slide saying when the antes are involved, time to ramp up your aggression. So you're sitting in middle position with any 2 cards, and you've identified some of the scenarios that we showed in those hand histories that I went through. Tight players to your left, you're not going to be committed. You can get some nice plus EV scenarios and build your stack and set yourself up for some even more plus EV scenarios down the road. Now, I wanted, like I said before, when I was first going through, I want to go back to a hand. This ace-7 hand. So the question is, we're committed to this player. What happens if we don't have this ideal scenario where we're not committed to any stacks? We can raise and fold easily and call the all-in with the appropriate range. What happens if we have one person that we're committed to? Do we only open hands that have showdown value like ace high and king 10 and pocket pairs? Or can we go ahead and open any 2 cards again? Let's figure it out. So let's, thank God I saved it. So here we are. Nope. Okay, so these are the stack setups. We are here with the 26-25 stack. And as you see from this hand, the small blind has the 1K stack. So, and you can see that here. Okay, so we're committed. We're not committed to anybody except for that one player. So we're going to give everybody pretty much the same 3-betting range except for the small blind. We're going to give him this range. We're going to give him any. She's going to shove any ace, any pocket pair, king 10, the king 9 suited. So about 25, 26% of his range. Let's see what we get there. So, and accordingly, and what we're going to do is, since we're committed as well, we're going to say we're going to call with any 2 cards. So we raise any 2, he's shoving 25%, and we're just going to call with any 2 cards here, all hands. So let's perform the EV calculation there. Do. Be patient, be patient. 0.43%. So even though we're going to be committed to one of these players, we can still go ahead and open any 2 cards and call his all-in with any 2 cards. Okay? So that's why I can open here. I mean, ace-7 is fine to open with, but I could technically open with deuce-3. Deuce-3 is a bit more marginal. It's 0.11. But my ace-7, if you look on the left here, it has a 0.64 plus EV on that play right there. So that's, again, we can't miss these spots. And one thing I actually forgot that I wanted to go back to. I want to go back to this other scenario. So we've shown that against your normal three betting ranges, opening up in this scenario, it was had a plus EV of 1.17. Having a committed stack, you were around 0.6 as far as your plus EV. So these spots can't be missed. What happens? I mean, what happens if you have one crazy player at the table? Not everybody is going to be three betting with exactly the same range. I understand. So the question is, what if we have that aggressive player, that guy who's three betting versus a steal, 10, 15%, maybe 20%? He's really out of control. So let's just say that it's this 2K stack, and he's not just three bet shoving ace jack and pocket eights. He's a little bit more insane. And let's give him, he's any ace and any pocket pair, kings. So like 22, 23%. Okay. So that's a bit aggressive, I would say. Now, let's say we don't even know that that's about to occur. So we're not going to change our calling range. We don't know that this guy's that aggressive. So we're not going to exploit that fact by calling even lighter. We're still going to call with the same range. What's our plus EV then? Maybe I should have lowered the simulations to 10,000. Probably would have got the job done. But 100,000 gets us even more accurate. So let's see what we have here. And it's 0.033. So it's still technically plus EV, whether you want to take that edge or not. If somebody's that aggressive, maybe it's let's see how wide or tight we have to make them so we get a better number. So we'll do that again. So just to show you that all of a sudden if one person gets out of control, it's not necessarily going to make that a losing play for you. That's why I want that. I know the EV there was extremely low, but I wanted to show how wide somebody has to be to start making these plays not profitable. So even if we tighten him up a little bit, we're giving him practically a 17% three betting range, which is extremely wide. Still plus EV. We have a couple hands in here you'll see that are negative, so it may not be any two cards at that point, but I think you get the point here that the common question that was posed to me by a lot of players was, what if somebody starts three betting me, or I'm afraid somebody's three betting me a little bit wider. That's okay. We just showed how wide somebody really has to three bet you to start making these plays not profitable. 23, 24%, I highly doubt that's going to happen when you're raising from middle position. Okay? So don't be too concerned if people start three betting you or you think they're three betting you wide. More often than not, they actually have the hand. If you do notice somebody is, well, then you have to adapt yourself and maybe either call wider or just tighten up your range. But, again, I sound like a broken record. These spots really can't be missed. And if you are missing them, it may be why maybe you've moved up stakes and you've hit a wall with your game. High variance, lower ROI. This is a way to get that edge back. So I hope that this was clear for you to understand that that this open here, forget that I have ace-7, with any two cards, would have been a very plus EV scenario. So let's get back to the presentation. So that was the examples and some crazy EV calculations. Coming soon, part 3, we're going to expand upon this even more, and we're going to talk about some more stealing opportunities and develop some more anti-strategies for the regs, utilizing the HUD stats and some more spots to steal. And we've talked a lot about regs. We're also going to talk about now exploiting fish and getting value from them. So today, this was one reason why my VPIP and preflop raise isn't 14-12 anymore. It's 22-18. There's many times I'm stealing with any two cards. Okay, coming soon in the coming videos, those types of strategies is going to allow us to open up even more from the small blind. We're going to take advantage of limpers. Like I said, we're going to take advantage of some fish and some light isolation raises. So all those are going to add into why we're going to be a lot more loose and aggressive and give you specific reasons and times to do it. So the takeaway from today, guys, is stop looking at your cards when you're about to open. Look at the stats. Look at the players. Are you going to play post flop? If you're only going to be three bet, if you're only going to get three bet, or they're going to fold, you don't need a range to open. You're not playing post flop. Who cares that Queen Jack plays better than three deuce? It doesn't matter. You're doing the same thing with those. So when the antes, as you approach the ante stage, big blind 100, big blind 200, you want to start ramping up your stealing. And when I say stealing, maybe that's a bad word, because I don't mean just everybody thinks stealing is from the button and the cutoff and the small blind. I'm talking about stealing from middle position and under the gun, because in our mind that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking advantage of the fact that we're not playing post flop and the players to our left and what their three betting range should be, and stealing from the different positions of the table. Think about it. When you open up under the gun, your perceived range from there, especially from other regs, is very strong. So think about if you're looking at you're on the button and a reg opens from under the gun, what range are you going to three bet them with? It's probably going to be ace king, maybe ace queen at the worst. Pocket tens, maybe not. Pocket jacks. So use that advantage or use that knowledge to your advantage, and don't be afraid to open. So I hope that was helpful for you. I hope that now you're going to the games developing good habits of when to be opening and not just click the fold button. Post any questions for me to clarify anything. I know this will be very new for most of you. I know it was very new for a lot of guys that took this course already, but they definitely saw their own stats increase from 12-10 and 16-14 up to that 22-21 area, and they've had a lot of success with this. So, and if you are going to start trying this strategy, I will say you might want to drop down tables. I mentioned that in the first video that you're going to be looking at stats a lot more, analyzing scenarios a lot more. So until you get used to that, I would say drop down your tables a little bit, so that you can concentrate on these plays, and then eventually you can bring the tables back in. So good luck with these strategies. Post any questions for me, and good luck at the tables, guys.